Can you imagine the college football world if Colorado gets a shot at the Big 12?
Get ready for the three-point stance. 3 different minds, 3 different opinions. 3 dudes talking ball. It's Kenton. It's Jay. It's Zach. Time to bring the heat, boys.
Yes, this is the 3-point stand. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Kenton Gibbs, Jay Smith. I'm Zach Blackerby. Is Gus Malzahn coaching for his job this weekend? Ohio State and Penn State is a massive game, but it kind of doesn't really feel like one. Do these teams make the playoffs? We jump into that in just a moment. But will Colorado get a shot at the Big 12? Ken, you mentioned them as a winner of the week yesterday on the show. They sit at 4-1, tied with Kansas State in the Big 12. Iowa State's 4-0. BYU is 5-0. There's not a whole lot of games left. Can Colorado make the Big 12 championship?
As much as I would love to say yes, and mathematically there is a fact that it is a fact. It could happen mathematically. No, it's not going to happen. The way that their schedule lines up, they've already played one of the teams that is in front of them and lost that game head-to-head. Yep. So if there is a situation where they end up tied with Kansas State, going into, Iowa State or BYU has collapsed a little bit down the stretch, you're still looking at a situation where they're not in. And let's be very honest. Have y'all watched BYU? Oh, let me tell you something. Them boys are playing some football now. They may not drink. They may not, do anything with alcohol. But I'm going to tell you, when they get on that field, they surely acting the Fulio off the Julio because they whooping the wheels off folks. And then you talk about Iowa State. Matt Campbell, they said this is the biggest job you get. He said, you sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that? Because he is dominating at Iowa State right now. So I look at the 2 teams in front of them in that regard and say, man, that's tough. And then Kansas State, you've lost head-to-head already. Even though that this Colorado team keeps getting better and better, they're just in a mathematical spot where it's like, you're technically possible to make it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you would need some major collapses. And Jay, the interesting thing about this is the teams in front of them, they don't really play each other. Kansas State and Iowa State play each other in the last week of the regular season. But among all those teams in front of them, they've either already played each other and Colorado's still in this situation, or they don't play each other this season.
Yeah, and Ken's right. I was about to go off and be like, what? You're going to disrespect the Buffs? You're going to disrespect the way that Coach Prime is coaching? But no, you're 100% right, because that is exactly their problem. It's 100% out of their hands because of that Kansas State loss. They need Iowa State to show up and destroy Kansas State to end the season. But before that, they're going to need at least a loss by each one of these teams going forward. That's the thing that sucks about having massive conferences, is that you're going to have a substantial amount of tiebreaker situations that's going to break things up. Granted, Colorado is up there in points for in the conference games, which does help them. Iowa State doesn't score very many points. So if there's a tiebreaker situation for them, that's something that does help Colorado. Colorado's sitting at 182 points this season. BYU's at 189, while BYU's at 188. And so what Colorado's going to have to do going forward is 100% style points. They got to beat the crud out of Texas Tech. They've got to destroy Utah. They got to blast Kansas and Oklahoma State for them to be back in that conversation, because points are going to matter going forward for them. That Kansas State loss is going to haunt them all the way through this. But I'm going to be honest, I think they have a really good chance. I can smell upsets coming down the line for Iowa State or BYU. The only team that makes me worry about BYU is Utah. And the reason why I say that is Utah is not only a rival, but their backs are against the wall right now. Winningham is, honestly, I think he's coaching for his job. His offensive coordinator basically resigned because their offense was so awful. There may be some questions out there in Utah saying, hey, we may need to look around for something else, because we keep getting stuck at the same spot every year.
Who are they going to get that's better than him is my question.
I was just about to say, Utah can't
they're not firing him.
I don't disagree, but Utah has a very high opinion of themselves. That's the other thing we have to remember, especially since those Pac-12 championships, they think highly of themselves. So at some point, they're going to be like, look, if you're going to keep hitting the same wall every year, we may have to start reviewing and see if we can get some. Because look at what BYU's doing. They're undefeated. Why aren't we undefeated? Why do we keep getting stuck? That's going to be the questions coming out of Utah.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Kenton, Jay, we've talked a lot about, okay, you're going to see all of these teams go to their conference championship games or the top two. Those third and fourth teams that don't go, that still are considered to be, a bid for the college football playoff, does it help them? Who is that in the Big 12? Who's going to be on the outside looking in of the Big 12 championship to say, hey, maybe this helps us because, we don't have to worry about picking up an extra loss going into that 12-team field that is the college football playoff?
Well, this is one of those moments where, Colorado could very well be that team. They're most likely.
I think they got a shot. Sure.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm not sure, just because of the public perception of Deion, fairly or unfairly, that they will get in. People are refusing to talk about what an amazing coaching job this is. What an amazing coaching job. In year one, everybody said, well, you lost, and look at Northwestern and all the winning they're doing, without taking a single peek at Northwestern's schedule last year and saying, wait a minute, you have who? You're playing who? Oh, my God, PU, this stinks. How did you come up with a Big Ten schedule this bad? Nobody thought about that. All it was, well, that's a one-year turnaround. That last year, they were terrible. Look at them. And now look, Deion has built something that is becoming sustainable. It is becoming long-lasting. And look at Northwestern. So I say that to say that the perception may keep Deion and company out, even though that's a hellacious team. Point blank, period. You have a quarterback that I will put up against anybody in the country right now, in Shedeur Sanders. Okay, I don't care. I don't care what Shedeur's name is. Shedeur could be a Sanders, a Smith, a Gibbs, or a Blackerby, and he'd still be the baddest man in the room. There is no doubt about that. Travis Hunter is Travis Hunter. I mean, he's Charles Woodson on steroids pretty much here. The man is a freak on both sides of the ball. And you look at this team overall and say they've gotten much better in the trenches, which is where they needed to improve. They didn't want to improve. They needed to improve there. So should they have consideration? Absolutely. Will they? Most likely not.
Yeah, Jay, if Colorado wins out and doesn't make the Big 12 championship, which we all agree is that's a pretty likely scenario here, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. That is the rest of Colorado's games. All of those, I think we all agree, are pretty winnable. If they're 10-2, don't go to the Big 12 championship, are they a playoff team?
Yes. Wow. I say it. 10-2, they're going to throw them in the playoffs. And for the opposite reason that Kenton said, as much as as little as we've heard the media really praise Coach Prime for this great job, we're seeing a few people advocate. Like, you see Stephen A. Smith, who's been talking a lot about Prime as of late, really digging into Paul Feinbaum's notion that Prime is a sideshow and just a joke. He's out there winning games. And honestly, there's going to be some campaigning to get Colorado in there. Why? It brings eyeballs. The one thing we've learned about the way the playoffs are set up, it's all about a show. It's all about who's going to get the most views and stuff, which I hate that notion of it. While at the same time, if Colorado finishes 10-2, there's going to be argument to throw them in there as like the 12th seed or the 11th seed, just so that we can see them on the role player team. And then when they go out there and do what we want out of the playoffs, which is the exact same thing as March Madness in college football, they pull up that Cinderella story and win that game. Guess what? They head to the next round and everybody's going to be firing on all cylinders for Colorado. This is great for them. Making the Big 12 championship would be better because it's a lot better, quote unquote, optics. But at this point, now that they're ranked 23rd, they have a great opportunity to keep flying up the charts. And they could finish this season within the top 15 because there's a lot of teams in like the other conferences, the ACC, as well as the Big Ten, that start playing each other. And you're going to start seeing those teams tumble. Colorado can keep winning, and they win in style. That's the thing. That's where those style points come in. They blow out everybody in the Big 12. People are going to want to see them in there because they want to see Travis Hunter and they want to see Shedeur Sanders.
Right.
And as Prime even said, why isn't Shedeur in the Heisman conversation? Oh yeah, that's why. He's my son.
All right, so there's four. Go ahead, Kenton, real quick.
I feel where you're going. I really and truly do. But the other part of why Colorado is going to be left out of this thing is look at their last four Are any of the teams in their last 4 going to finish with a winning record? Any of them? I mean, we look at these teams and we say, hey, if Colorado runs the table, naturally they're going to get respect. All that's going to happen is people are going to look at them and degrade that Big 12 schedule fairly or unfairly. And I think it's unfairly, but I think there's going to be a lot of, Dion is all types of things with all this. They shouldn't belong and da-da-da-da. The minute they lose a game in the playoffs, this is why. Da-da-da-da-da. But I do agree. I will concede to your point that he does bring eyeballs, and even hate watchers are watchers. So I get that.
No question. No question about that. All right, there are more teams on the playoff bubble. We tell you if they get in or not next, right here on the 3-point stance.
And folks, before we get into that, we've got to get into one of our favorite things, because 3-point stance fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we pulled over 20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive changes. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes that you love, ensuring that all the funds go to the specific players you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athletes transfer or don't deliver on the content, you get your money back. And this week, not to make any specific host on this show happy, we are supporting Jarquez Hunter of Auburn as our Roy Player of the Week. 23 carries, 278 yards, 2 tutties. That is an average of 12.1 per carry. Folks, I'm telling you something right now. We pitched in $100, and we'd love for you to join us. Even $10 makes a difference. So let's show Jarquez the love and keep him connected to Auburn. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets up your team for success. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy return on you for more info. Roy, support players, change the game.
Thank you so much for making the 3-point stance your first listen every single day. All right, are these teams in the playoffs? Jay, we'll start with you. Iowa State. We'll stay on the topic of the Big 12.
Ooh,
Iowa State. Is Iowa State a playoff team when the season is over?
They run the table they're in. They're in because they have one ranked team, which is Kansas State, to end the season, and they are in. They'll be undefeated. There's no reason why you don't put an undefeated team in there. We all know the Big 12 champion and the runner-up will both make it, which kind of makes the Big 12 championship game not as fun. But yeah, they're in.
I agree. There's no way you keep a undefeated out. There's no way you do that. And if you were to try to keep an undefeated out, I think that defeats the spirit of the playoff.
Exactly.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's why you expanded it so more folks would have a chance for sure. All right, this one's a little trickier in my mind. Texas A&M. Is Texas A&M a playoff team when it's all said and done? Kenton, you lead this one.
Y'all know me. Y'all know I love me some of that Aggie man in Aggie land. I love Mike Elko. And this is going to test me as a man, because I've got to be honest with myself and say, how many SEC teams do I want in there? How many SEC teams belong in there is the more important question than how many do I think deserve to be there. And here's a fun fact about the Texas A&M Aggies. There are only a handful of undefeated teams across America in terms of in-conference. And one of them is those Aggies. They belong. They've deserved it. They've shown it. Give me the Aggies in the playoff, baby. I'm ready to see it.
So A&M's interesting to me because I think this is one of those situations where they're probably going to be in the SEC championship game.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think they went out. The most likely loss is Texas against Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Smith's Texas Longhorns. I love that shirt, by the way, my guy.
Love it.
So, but let's say they don't win out. Let's say they go 10-2 and they lose in the SEC championship game to Georgia, whoever, doesn't matter. Is this going to be a situation where a 3-loss team does get into the playoff because they lost a championship game?
Yes. Yes, they're going to put them in there because they have 2 top 10 wins, even though one of them is kind of fluky when it comes to Missouri, because Missouri has shown us that they are cheeks down the stretch, and now they lost their quarterback. Ooh, it's going to be even worse.
How's
for
Missouri still ranked, by the way?
them.
That is the most ridiculous.
SEC.
It just means more for Missouri than all these undefeated teams.
Oh my
One loss
gosh.
team.
Yeah, they should
Unbelievable.
not be ranked in any way, shape, or form. They should have been kicked out, especially after back-to-back drubbings by teams that are ranked very high. That's usually what you do. You kick people out top 25. But real quick on that, I do think that A&M goes because I think they beat Texas at the end of the season. They're hosting them at Kyle Field. And we've seen Texas look a little vulnerable over the last few games. And I don't think it gets better for Texas down the stretch. They're going to play a lot of teams that are desperate. And those desperate teams are going to force Texas to have to really, toughen up. And there's a chance that Texas could see a potential upset down the line from one of these other SEC teams that we're not expecting.
Do y'all see the orange colored glasses that Jay Smith has on right now with the Texas shirt? It's hurting him. This is how
It's
much
gold.
trying.
These are gold. This is black and gold, man.
He's trying.
These are black and gold.
He's trying so hard.
This is why we care on the 3-point stance. But I do want to make one quick caveat here. If Texas A&M ends up being a 3-loss team and their last 2 games are both losses, it may be unfair. It may not be right. I don't see a world where they get in. I don't. Even if they make the SEC championship, if their last 2 games, lost to Texas, lost to whoever they play in the SEC championship, I don't see a world where they get in. And also, to me, as unfair as it is, and again, this is why I said this is going to test my principles.
Ooh.
This brings up exactly. It's about the principalities, Smokey. But this brings up 2 things against each other. In that, do I want to see a 3-loss team in, and am I going to punish a team for losing their conference championship game, where some teams that are behind them are going to get in and they'll have less losses because they didn't play the conference championship game? So, it's the unfortunate situation of these mega conferences that we're seeing. Like Jay said, there's going to be teams that don't play each other, and there's going to be 3rd and 4th teams that escape having to play a conference championship game with an excellent resume.
Yeah, the math gets tricky if you automatically take the 8 teams that play in your conference championship. But it gets tough. It gets really tight at that point.
Absolutely.
There's a caveat, though, to that. The good thing is this is not like the conference championships of old where you would have 4 and 5 or 6 lost teams make the conference championship because their division was boo-boo. This is actual situation where it's the 2 top teams in the conference playing for that championship game. So to me, that's automatic bids. Every conference in the P4 should automatically, the winner and the backup should, and the second team should always make the playoffs because these are still the 2 top teams in the conference. Regardless, tiebreaker wise, they ended up making it in there because of that. So that's the only thing where I would push back on.
Does it make them not then why are we playing them at that point?
Right.
I mean, that's well, I think the caveat is if you make the conference championship, that gets you in the playoffs. Now you need to win it to take the championship home for yourself. But the purpose of that game is who gets the bye week.
Zach, have you lost your mind? It's been too long since Auburn has been in a SEC championship game. He done forgot. You care about a championship game because it is a championship game. Even if you're guaranteed a spot in the playoff, I get it. Cam Newton ain't walking through that door. I understand. I'm not mad at you about that. I get it. Bo Jackson ain't walking through that door, but still, you never want to say there's a chance for a championship. We'll rest it out since we're already in the playoff because that's the real championship. Football players are idiots. We want to win everything. If there was a pissing contest, you see all of us against the fence with a bunch of water pills and jugs or gallons of water. What are we talking about here? Why would they play the game?
All right, my last one, playoff team or not, the Pitt Panthers. Can you lead the way on this one? This is your realm, your world.
Hey now, I told everybody this Pitt Panther team was for real. And like MC Hammer said, they are too legit. Too legit to quit. Too legit to quit. Let me tell you something. Pitt is going to have the opportunity to truly show us if they are a playoff team going forward because they have Clemson on that schedule down the line. I believe they're playing SMU this weekend.
Yes, this weekend.
So they will have the opportunity to show, are we for real or not? With that in mind, as it stands right now, the Pitt Panthers are a playoff team. Undefeated in the Power Four has to get you in order for the playoffs to matter. Now, at the end of the season, will they be undefeated? A little bit different of a story. But at the moment, I believe they're a playoff team, and I believe they're much higher than their ranking is giving them love for, or a much better team their ranking is giving them love for.
Yeah, but they're probably going to lose. I mean, they're probably going to lose both of those games, right?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Make sure you bring up that spread when we go through our next ad read.
I doubt it.
I saw it.
All I'm saying is this. I know I saw Kevin Jennings turn the ball over the way he did. If Manny Diaz didn't go full, F it, we're going to win the game right now. I am sure that the ponies would have limped their way on out of Durham, or actually was that game in Dallas. Whichever way it happened, Duke would have snuck out with a win, okay? But, it doesn't happen that way. And if ifs were fifths, we would all be drunk. And the reality of this situation is I can easily see a world where Pitt beats SMU. SMU is a very good team, but I can see the world where they beat them, and I can see a world where they beat Clemson. I said it. I know people are going to be upset about that, but I see a world where they went out.
I mean, that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy.
Absolutely.
Because then, you have the discussions. If that were to happen.
3 bids.
I don't think Clemson's in if that happens.
Really? Wow. So Clemson losing to the team in Georgia who's won 2 of the last 3 national championships and will be in the playoff.
If what y'all have said consistently is every team that plays for a conference championship gets a bid, I think so. Then that's 8 bids tied up. Clemson would not be one of them in this situation because they would not go to the ACC championship game. In this case, it would be Pitt and Miami. And then the 9th one's going, I guess, to Boise State. And I just think there'd be 2 at-large bids ahead of Clemson in this scenario.
I hear you. I hear you. And the math does work out that way, but this is what I'm saying in terms of why is the SEC not getting the respect? Why is the ACC not getting the respect in terms of, hey, Clemson didn't just look good running through that ACC schedule. They ran through the ACC schedule like Tomb Raiders, okay? And they lost 1 game. And now all of a sudden, they lost 1 game, not just to anybody, to an undefeated Pitt. And now all of a sudden, they're not worthy? And meanwhile, we're talking about Bama with 2 losses potentially sitting there. We're sitting here talking about, there's Tennessee or Georgia will have to have multiple losses, but they're probably going to get it. What? Come on, man. Come on. I ain't buying it. I ain't going for it. I believe that if Pitt beats Clemson, that shows you that the ACC is a 3.
Well, in this scenario, right, you would need 3 at-large teams, and whoever's third in the Big Ten would get one. We've already talked about whoever.
Should they?
I don't know if they should or not, but Penn State's going to be sitting there with probably 1 loss.
Yeah. Your problem now is, and this is the fun part. I even talked about this before on when it comes to the playoffs, is now we get to argue about who's going to get those last 4 spots. And we're going to do a lot of arguing about that because the conversation is going to be even more wild because the conference is so large, you've got a lot more teams that are undefeated or just 1 loss heading into playoff conversation. So 1 loss is your golden ticket into the championship. 1 loss doesn't kill you. 2 might, but 2 still puts you in that conversation.
Yeah, you're still in the conversation. That's right. Hey, do we have a head coach coaching for his job? Let's bring that up in just a moment right here on the 3-Point Stance. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. We all know it. Right now, you can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Let me run a few lines past you guys, if y'all don't mind.
Shoot away.
Let's start with Pittsburgh at SMU. SMU minus 7.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. That is a very large line.
Oh my goodness, it is. That means that SMU will be a favorite if they were up there at Pitt by about 2.5, and that would be a little questionable. So I think SMU's probably going to go ahead and cover that spread. That's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a wild one. Give me SMU.
In the words of Stephanie Mills, don't stop, doing what you do. Pitt, you're going to go undefeated and win this football game. I got Pitt Panthers not only winning, but covering. Not only covering, but winning as well.
All right, there we go. All right, the number 10 Texas A&M Aggies at the South Carolina Gamecocks in Columbia, South Carolina. Just a 2.5-point favorite for the Aggies.
See, that was exactly what I said. That if it was the opposite direction for SMU going to Pitt, they'd be about 2.5 as well. Now A&M is. So it sounds like the odds makers see A&M as the superior team even on the road, but that South Carolina defense, man, they're probably one of the most underrated defenses in the country, just that defensive line by itself. So, I mean, I think A&M does do that. I think that they continue this run on the line. Shout out to Mike Elko out there recoaching his old boys. I think A&M gets it.
South Carolina is about to get that move your hand treatment. Give me the Aggies.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, be sure to check all of these lines out and more over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Final few minutes of today's edition of the 3-Point Stance. Gus Malzahn, is he coaching for his job yet again? He and the Knights are hosting the Arizona Wildcats. These two teams are not doing very well. Things are not going well for UCF in Orlando. They are a 6-point favorite, 6.5-point favorite against Arizona, but you're seeing Gus Malzahn run off the field and his student section is chanting, "Fire Gus." Things aren't going well. Is this a type of game where if they slip and Arizona figures out how to use their two really, really talented players to, consistently throughout a full 60 minutes, is this a situation where, hey, it's time to look for a new coach in Orlando?
This has clearly been Zach's favorite episode of the podcast so far, right? We give Jarquez some love. We get to talk about Malzahn coaching for his job again.
I love Gus. I love Gus Malzahn.
And it just so happens that you wear your Locked On Auburn pullover today. What a coinky dink. What a
coinky dink.
Now, with that being said, I think that Gus Malzahn was handed a really rough hand that people are not realizing. Are either of you soccer fans by any chance?
I dabble.
No.
There's a system in relegation in soccer, in the Premier League and all that overseas and whatnot, right? And do either of you understand how that works by and large?
Yeah, relegation, yeah.
Okay, so what generally happens to the team that's then put a level higher? What generally happens to that team the next year? What's their most likely outcome?
I assume they lose a lot.
They get knocked back down to the league they were previously in. That's the most likely outcome. UCF was prompted into the Big 12, and everybody said, "Oh, they're going to be fine. They're going to be great. It's going to be just like Conference USA." And look at what all these other one-off teams are doing. Look at what SMU is doing right now in the ACC. Look at what this team's doing. Look at that. It doesn't work that way more often than not. Those teams are the exception, not the rule. So to sit here and say, "Malzahn, you're terrible, you're awful, you're doing all these awful things," don't get me wrong. I can see, hey, he's made some terrible decisions as a head coach, right? Hitching your wagon to KJ Jefferson. Well, it was one of those, what are you doing there, buddy? But at the time, it made a lot of sense. It looked like the right call at that moment. So I sit here and I say to myself, I would give him one more year, just one more, and say, hey, if you cannot get it done, if you cannot turn us into something serious in this 5th year of yours, you got to go, brother. You got to go. We gave you 3 years in the Big 12 to try to figure it out, try to get this thing right, and you have not righted the ship. You have to leave.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of giving your coach that 5 years, especially if you're moving them into new conferences. Just give them the 5 years, see if they can really get it going. But yeah, the struggle has been horrible. He just fired his defensive coordinator literally 8 games into the season. That's bananas to me because they did get noticeably worse on defense right now. 3-5 so far, 1-4. And I mean, I know that Kenton had to get the jokes out there about Auburn, but man, he was winning a lot of games at Auburn. And I'm kind of surprised. I understand why Auburn moved on, but I'm really surprised they went ahead and said, yeah, we're going to show you the door on this one. Because he's been winning a lot.
He's a good coach.
He's a good coach. He's a good schemer. He does a really good job with that. But again, hitching his wagon to KJ Jefferson when Cam Ward is in the portal, You don't find a way to try to spend money on quarterbacks like him. Riley Leonard, somebody else that you know that can actually throw the ball and run, probably should have went that direction. But no, I agree. I think he is coaching for his job. This is the 5th year. This is the year of truth. You need to make something happen. It's pissed to get off the pot. This feels like that situation for him. And their schedule is not going to be that optimal going forward.
But the 2 quarterbacks you just mentioned are they're $1 million naysayers. You understand? Like,
I agree.
You can't just say, "Oh, get you a Cam Ward, get you a Riley Leonard." That price is premium.
I know the price of the brick goes up every year.
But I do think he could have made changes quicker. Like the Ja'Cory Brown kid who they switched to, like he does seem to be more electric than KJ Jefferson. You know, I think a lot of fans would be more forgiving if you would have kind of, break glass in case of emergency a little bit earlier. I think that's kind of something, and that's something that went back even to his time at Auburn.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I'm not saying that he has done this coaching thing perfectly. All I'm saying is he deserves a little bit more grace than, hey, your team went to a new conference. This is their 2nd year in the Big 12. He's in the middle of his 2nd year in a new conference that is a step above, a cut above where they formerly were. I just don't, I get it. UCF is a proud program, so proud that they made themselves national championships and recognize a championship that is not recognized by the AP and by most sources. I understand it. I get it. It was 1 or 2 sources that named them national champ. But the fact of the matter is, this is not necessarily a super feasible situation that I look at and I'm like, hey, if Gus makes these 2-3 pivotal changes as a head coach, they're fine, because I don't think that world exists.
Right.
Well, we can also talk about how BYU came from being an independent, and then now they're 8-0 and 5-0 in conference. Right? BYU is also one school that made the exact same leap that they did, and
you don't want to hear that.
And bounds better.
You don't want to hear that right now.
And they struggled last season. That's the crazy part. They were 5-7 last year. They weren't very good in a lot of situations, but this year, completely different team.
Yeah. I mean, not only number one. Independent to that is different. Independent from what conference were they in? The American Athletic or the Conference USA? It was
American Athletic. They're American Athletic.
Being independent to
better competition over there.
It's just factually different. Those are 2 different things. Remember during COVID when Zach Wilson was there and they magically put together a game like in 3 days to play a ranked Coastal Carolina team? That's the type of stuff that you can do when you are a independent as opposed to having a conference tie-in. And furthermore, like you just said, BYU was 5-7 last year. Don't get me wrong. That change of identity and all that, that's great for them. Good for them. But I'm not going to judge Malzahn against, hey, this one exception is who you need to be. Most teams that were 5-7 last year are not much better than what Malzahn and company are doing right now. So, I'm fine with the idea that we need to be a cut above and we can do all that. Sure, get a man 3 years in the new conference and then cut him loose.
All right, thank you so much for making the 3-point stance your first listen every single day. For Kenton Gibbs, Jay Smith, I'm Zach Blackerby. This has been the 3-point stance.
Go talk about some BYU. Them boys don't even drink. They drinking milk during halftime. Talking about BYU.